Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to my Maktab by LMA with MLX Plus. We are continuing with the legacy of Umar radiallahu anhu and his conquest. Today we move on to the fall of Jerusalem. Lesson 19. Jerusalem had importance to the Muslims, to the Jews, to the Christians, as they all resided in Jerusalem. As we know about the history of Jerusalem from previous prophets, they all felt that they had the right to Jerusalem. So Jerusalem was not only occupied by Muslims, they were Jews, they were Christians. They were living in peace and harmony, and they had no problem. But after the fall of Fustat, they decided that they were uneasy and uncomfortable, so they wanted to engage in talks. So the Jews and Christians summoned Hazrat Umar to come himself to Jerusalem as they wanted to engage in talks. Jerusalem fell without bloodshed. There was no bloodshed, there was no war, meaning when there was no bloodshed, there was no war. They only wanted to engage in talks, and they wanted to come to some kind of agreement that they could still live, and they could still live in peace and harmony with the Muslims. They wanted the Khalifa to come personally. They didn't want to engage in talks with any other person. They wanted Umar radiallahu anhu to present himself. Umar radiallahu anhu set out to Jerusalem in such a simple way that when he entered the town, the people of Jerusalem were shocked that such a man of high stature, being the Amir al-Mu'mineen, came into Jerusalem with simple patched clothing, one or two Sahaba, his horse, a tent, and one servant. He did not need an entourage, an army, expensive traveling commode. He didn't need any of that. He was simple as he was. He presented himself in such a manner. They were so amazed that Umar radiallahu anhu presented himself in such a simple manner. When the talk started, the agreement came into that 3 points were made. Freedom of religion. They could stay in Jerusalem and practice their religion freely without any trouble from each or other party. So they would be able to practice with no problem. The protection of their churches, crosses, or their holy symbols. They were guaranteed that they will not be harassed, or their churches will not be destroyed, their crosses will not be destroyed, their synagogues, whatever it was. They were promised that the protection of their churches and holy sites will be protected. The third point, to remain in Jerusalem or to leave. They had a choice. They could stay in Jerusalem, there would be no problem, and if they wanted to leave, they could leave freely. Again, we see the fairness of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu in his cabinet through his presidency. He was very, very fair. As much as him being harsh in his approach or his manner or his vigor or his valor, he could always come to an agreement, and when he had agreed on something, he kept his word and he kept his promise, and this stood out to the non-believers. In the 17th year after Hijrah, the Romans made a final attempt to take back their territory. It was no avail, as the Muslims were quite strong. A severe plague broke out, and 25,000 Muslims lost their lives. This plague broke out in Syria, Egypt, and Iraq. Many Muslims lost their lives, and this was a severe plague. Coming back to a plague, and talking about a modern day plague. We can say COVID being a modern day plague. The advice from the time of Rasulullah was that you should not enter into a town where there is a plague, or you should not leave the town where a plague has been, where you are in and there is a plague. So there's two things to this. When there's a plague that's broken out into a town, city, and you are there, you should stay back. Whatever the decree of Allah may be, that you should be happy with that. As if you leave the town, you might take the plague with you. And if you are outside of the town and you know that there's a plague inside of this town, do not knowingly enter into the town, as you might willingly get affected. At the end of the day, this was all the decree of Allah Ta'ala, and we accept His judgment totally, and only in His infinite mercy and wisdom we have to make peace and understand that this is the will of Allah Ta'ala. I leave you with this, and in the next lesson we will conclude the fall of Egypt. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The kitab that I'm using is Khulafaa-e-Rashideen from the Lenasia Muslim Association.